Makini was a young African girl who lived in a small rural village. Surrounded by lush green fields and the warm embrace of her loving family, she led a peaceful and contented life. Makini's days were filled with laughter, storytelling, and the vibrant sounds of village life. She had dreams of becoming a teacher one day, but little did she know that her life was about to take a tragic turn point one fateful day. Makini's father, overwhelmed by financial difficulties, made a heartbreaking decision. He agreed to marry off his beloved daughter to a wealthy and much older man, hoping to alleviate their family's financial burdens. When Makini heard this news, her world shattered into pieces. The thought of being forced into a marriage with a man old enough to be her grandfather filled her with fear and despair. She felt trapped, with no control over her own destiny. Determined not to accept her fate passively, Makini turned to her wise grandmother for guidance. She sought solace in the comforting words and ancient wisdom her grandmother possessed. "My child," her grandmother whispered, "you possess strength within you that you have yet to discover. Stand up for your rights and fight against this injustice." Inspired by her grandmother's words, Makini embarked on a journey of self-empowerment. She began secretly educating herself, learning about women's rights and the stories of courageous women who had fought against injustice throughout history. With the weight of her impending marriage pressing upon her, Makini knew she had to take action. Late one moonlit night, she confided in her best friend, Fatima, who vowed to help her escape. Together, they devised a plan to flee the village under the cover of darkness. With their hearts pounding and adrenaline coursing through their veins, they slipped away, leaving behind the only life they had ever known. As Makini and Fatima ventured into the unknown, they found themselves in the bustling city. The sights, sounds, and sheer magnitude of the urban landscape overwhelmed them. But Makini's spirit remained unbroken. She was determined to create a new life for herself. Free from the chains of a forced marriage, the city presented Makini with a new set of challenges. Finding shelter and employment proved to be difficult, and she faced discrimination and exploitation. Yet, through it all, Makini's resilience shone bright. She refused to let adversity define her. Day by day, she persevered, knocking on doors and seeking opportunities to support herself. Makini's determination caught the attention of a local women's organization. Impressed by her spirit and eagerness to learn, they offered her a job. Makini embraced the opportunity, immersing herself in the organization's work. She gained valuable skills and knowledge, empowering herself and others. Makini's journey of survival and resilience transformed her into a passionate advocate for women's rights. Drawing from her own experiences, she spoke out against forced marriages, raising awareness about the plight of young girls like herself. Her story resonated with many, igniting a spark of hope in the hearts of those facing similar challenges. Word of Makini's bravery spread, reaching the ears of prominent activists and organizers. They recognized her as an agent of change and invited her to speak at a national conference on gender equality. Nervous yet determined, Makini stood before the crowd, sharing her story and advocating for the rights of women and girls. Amidst her tireless advocacy work, Makini crossed paths with Kwame, a compassionate and understanding young man who shared her passion for justice. Kwame became her rock, supporting her cause and standing by her side. Their connection grew deeper, blossoming into a love that healed the emotional wounds Makini carried from her past. Makini and Kwame's shared vision led them to establish a safe house for women escaping forced marriages. With the help of generous donors and supportive allies, they provided shelter, education, and legal support to those in need. Makini's organization grew, reaching more villages and cities, offering hope and opportunities for survivors to rebuild their lives. Makini's journey from a young girl forced into a marriage to a powerful advocate for women's rights became an inspiration for many. Her resilience, strength, and unwavering spirit touched the hearts of countless individuals. Makini's story served as a reminder that survival is not merely about enduring, but about rising above adversity and forging a path towards a brighter future. Through her courage and determination, Makini created a legacy of empowerment, proving that even in the face of unimaginable challenges, one person can make a difference and bring about lasting change. Amara was a young African girl who lived in a vibrant village nestled amidst rolling hills and colorful landscapes. The village was known for its strong sense of community and adherence to age-old traditions. Amara grew up surrounded by the laughter of children, the rhythm of drums, and the comforting embrace of her loving family. Her days were filled with chores, storytelling under the shade of the baobab tree, and dreams of a future filled with possibilities. One day, Amara's world turned upside down when her parents called her into their humble home. Her heart raced with anticipation and confusion as she entered, only to be met with solemn expressions on her parents' faces. They sat her down and gently broke the news that she had been promised to a wealthy 70-year-old man in a neighboring village. Shock and disbelief washed over Amara as her dreams of education, independence, and love were shattered in an instant. Amara's spirit refused to be broken. Deep within her, a fire ignited, fueling her determination to reclaim her agency and challenge the injustice imposed upon her. Late at night, she would steal moments to herself, seeking solace under the starry sky. It was during those stolen moments that Amara found strength in the stories her grandmother shared, a legacy of women who defied societal norms and fought for their rights. Inspired by their resilience, Amara resolved to carve her own path. Amara knew that defying tradition would not be easy. She began by mustering the courage to have open conversations with her parents. With unwavering determination, she expressed her desire to choose her own path in life. Her parents, bound by tradition themselves, were torn between their love for Amara and the expectations of their community. The battle for Amara's agency had just begun. Amara found solace in her childhood friend, Kofi, who shared her dreams of a fair and just society. Together, they sought out an activist organization that fought against forced marriages and advocated for women's rights. The organization provided them with guidance, resources, and a network of like-minded individuals who believed in the power of self-determination. Amara and Kofi found strength in their shared vision for a better future. Amara knew that simply defying tradition was not enough. She had to navigate a treacherous path to reclaim her autonomy. She became a master of subtlety, carefully planting seeds of doubt within her community about the practice of forced marriages. She engaged in conversations with elders, gently challenging their beliefs and highlighting the importance of individual choice. Amara's unwavering determination and eloquent arguments began to make a dent in the armor of tradition. Realizing that their fight required a physical distance from the suffocating grip of tradition, Amara and Kofi made the difficult decision to leave their village. Under the cover of darkness, they embarked on a perilous journey, venturing into the unknown. The path ahead was filled with uncertainty, but their hearts burned with the hope of finding a place where their dreams could take flight. After days of arduous travel, Amara and Kofi arrived at a bustling city where they sought refuge in a women's shelter. The shelter provided them with a safe haven, shielding them from the threats and judgments they had faced in their village. Surrounded by other women who had also escaped forced marriages, Amara found solace in their shared experiences. Together, they began to rebuild their lives, supporting and empowering one another. In the shelter, Amara discovered opportunities for education and personal growth. She eagerly immersed herself in the classes offered, learning not only academic subjects but also life skills and human rights. She realized that knowledge was her greatest weapon against the oppressive traditions that had plagued her village. Amara's confidence grew as she gained the tools to articulate her beliefs and advocate for the rights of women and girls. Within the shelter, Amara met Tund, a compassionate and understanding young man who shared her passion for justice. Their friendship blossomed into a deep bond built on respect, equality, and mutual support. Tund stood by Amara's side, offering unwavering encouragement as she continued her fight for agency. Together, they became a testament to the power of love that transcends societal expectations. Armed with newfound knowledge and a supportive network, Amara returned to her village, ready to challenge the tradition of forced marriages. She engaged in open dialogues with community members, sharing her own journey of self-discovery and the importance of individual choice. Amara's eloquence and conviction slowly began to shift the perspectives of those around her.